Looking at this title right now, I know exactly what's running through your mind. You're probably doing a quick mental inventory, aren't you? Scanning through your own behaviors and reactions, wondering if you actually possess these traits that separate the mentally resilient from everyone else. And that nagging question is there too. Am I part of that rare 1%, or am I still stuck with the majority who crumble under pressure? Here's the thing, you clicked on this video for a reason. Something inside you recognizes that mental strength isn't just about pushing through tough times. It's about a completely different way of operating in the world. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. We're going to walk through 7 specific signs that reveal true mental fortitude. But here's what makes this different from every other self-help list you've seen. These aren't just feel-good concepts. These are observable patterns that researchers have identified in people who consistently outperform under stress, who bounce back faster from setbacks, and who maintain clarity when everyone around them is losing their minds. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear answer to that question burning in your head right now. You'll know exactly where you stand, and more importantly, you'll understand why some people seem unshakable while others fall apart at the first sign of difficulty. The 7th sign, by the way, is something most people actually avoid doing because it feels counterintuitive. But it's the one that separates those who just survive challenges from those who use them to become even stronger. Sign 1. You question your own thoughts instead of believing them automatically. Right now, someone just had the thought that they're not good enough for the promotion they want. Within seconds, their heart rate increased, their shoulders tensed, and they started mentally rehearsing all the reasons why they'll probably get passed over again. Their mind immediately began constructing an entire narrative around this single thought, treating it as an unquestionable truth that demands an emotional response and behavioral change. This is how 99% of people operate. A thought appears in their consciousness, and they immediately become that thought's servant. They don't pause to examine where it came from, whether it's accurate, or if it deserves the authority they're giving it. The thought says you're going to embarrass yourself, and they cancel the presentation. The thought whispers they don't really like you, and they withdraw from social situations. The thought declares you'll never succeed, and they abandon their goals before even trying. But mentally strong people have developed something that changes everything. They've learned to become observers of their own thinking rather than prisoners of it. When that same thought about not being good enough for the promotion shows up, they notice it the way you might notice a bird landing on your windowsill. It's there, it's observable, but it doesn't automatically dictate what happens next. They've discovered that thoughts are not facts, they're not commands, and they're certainly not prophecies. Thoughts are simply mental events that occur in consciousness, no different from sounds you hear or sensations you feel. Some thoughts are useful, some are garbage, and most are just mental noise that doesn't deserve serious consideration. The difference in how this plays out is staggering. While the average person spirals into anxiety because their mind produced a negative prediction, the mentally strong person evaluates the thought like a scientist examining data. They ask themselves whether this thought is based on evidence or fear, whether it's helping them move forward or holding them back, and whether it deserves any of their precious mental energy. This isn't about positive thinking or trying to convince yourself that every thought should be sunshine and rainbows. Mentally strong people don't try to control what thoughts show up. That's impossible and exhausting. Instead, they've mastered the art of choosing which thoughts deserve their attention and which ones can be dismissed as mental static. Sign 2. You feel your emotions fully, but don't let them drive your actions. The biggest lie our culture tells us about mental strength is that tough people don't feel emotions as intensely as everyone else. We've been conditioned to believe that resilient individuals have somehow numbed themselves to life's emotional peaks and valleys, that they've built walls so thick that nothing can penetrate and disturb their inner peace. This couldn't be further from the truth. Mentally strong people don't feel less. They feel everything with stunning clarity and depth. Their emotional range isn't diminished, it's actually expanded and refined. When grief hits them, they experience every layer of that loss. When joy arrives, they absorb its full intensity. When anger rises, they feel its complete fire coursing through their system. The difference lies not in the volume of their emotional experience, but in their relationship with that experience. While most people treat emotions like unwelcome intruders that need to be either fought off or completely surrendered to, mentally strong people have learned to be intimate with their emotions without becoming slaves to them. They've discovered that emotions are sophisticated information systems that have evolved over millions of years to provide crucial data about their environment and circumstances. Fear tells them when caution is needed. Anger signals when boundaries have been crossed. Sadness reveals what matters deeply to them. Joy highlights what brings meaning and fulfillment. Most people panic when strong emotions arise because they've never learned to distinguish between feeling an emotion and being controlled by it. They think that experiencing anger means they must lash out, that feeling fear means they must retreat, that encountering sadness means they must collapse into despair. Mentally strong people have realized that emotions are like weather systems moving through their inner landscape. They can feel the storm without becoming the storm. They can experience the hurricane of rage without letting it destroy everything in its path. They can sit with the fog of depression without losing their ability to navigate forward. This emotional mastery doesn't come from suppression or denial. Those strategies actually weaken mental resilience over time. It comes from developing the capacity to be fully present with whatever emotion is arising while maintaining their ability to choose their response. They feel everything, miss nothing, but refuse to let any single emotional state hijack their decision-making process or derail their long-term objectives. Sign 3. You can take criticism without getting defensive or collapsing. When criticism comes their way, mentally strong people have discovered a response that most people don't even know exists. They've found the narrow path between two destructive extremes, a middle ground that transforms potentially damaging feedback into fuel for growth and improvement. This third option requires a fundamental shift in how they view their own identity and worth. They've learned to separate their core value as a human being from their current level of performance or skill in any particular area. Their self-worth isn't tied to being perfect or always being right, so criticism doesn't threaten the foundation of who they are. When someone points out their mistakes or shortcomings, they immediately begin mining that feedback for useful information. They approach criticism like an archaeologist examining artifacts, carefully extracting what's valuable while leaving behind what's irrelevant or contaminated by the critic's own issues. They understand that criticism, even when delivered poorly or with malicious intent, often contains kernels of truth that can accelerate their development. They've developed the rare ability to receive harsh feedback from someone they dislike and still find ways to use that information to their advantage. This process happens through a sophisticated internal filtering system they've developed over time. They automatically separate the useful content from the emotional delivery, the valid observations from the personal attacks, the constructive elements from the destructive ones. They can hear someone say, "You're terrible at this," and translate it into, "Here's an area where I can improve." Their ego doesn't collapse when faced with accurate criticism because they've already accepted that they're imperfect beings in a constant state of growth and evolution. They don't expect to be good at everything immediately, and they don't view current limitations as permanent character flaws. At the same time, they don't automatically accept all criticism as valid just because someone delivered it with authority or intensity. They evaluate feedback based on its accuracy and usefulness, not on the emotional force behind it or the status of the person giving it. This balanced approach allows them to maintain their confidence and self-respect while remaining open to improvement and course correction. They can acknowledge their mistakes without drowning in shame, accept their limitations without feeling worthless, and recognize their blind spots without questioning their fundamental competence. The result is accelerated growth that leaves their critics behind while they continue advancing toward their goals with refined skills and deeper self-awareness. Sign 4. You focus exclusively on what you can control. The average person spends their days wrestling with ghosts and shadows, pouring their precious mental energy into battles they can never win. They wake up angry about yesterday's failures, anxious about tomorrow's uncertainties, and frustrated by circumstances that exist completely outside their sphere of influence. They rage against the weather when it ruins their outdoor plans, as if their emotional intensity could somehow rearrange atmospheric conditions. They lose sleep over what their coworkers might be saying about them in private conversations, believing their worry can somehow control the thoughts forming in other people's minds. They replay past mistakes endlessly, convinced that enough mental repetition can somehow rewrite history and undo what's already been done. This is the exhausting reality of trying to control the uncontrollable. They waste enormous amounts of mental bandwidth on their ex-partner's new relationship, their neighbor's political opinions, their boss's mood swings, and their adult children's life choices. They monitor stock market fluctuations as if their anxiety could influence global economic forces, and they stress about potential natural disasters as if their worry serves as some kind of protective shield. Mentally strong people have made a revolutionary discovery that transforms how they allocate their attention and energy. They've learned to distinguish between the vast ocean of circumstances they cannot influence and the small but powerful island of factors they can directly control. They don't waste a single moment being upset about traffic jams because they understand that cars and construction exist independently of their emotional state. They don't spiral into anxiety about whether people like them because they've accepted that others' opinions form through complex processes that happen entirely outside their control. When they think about past mistakes, it's only to extract useful lessons for future decision-making, not to torture themselves with regret about unchangeable events. They don't worry about potential future disasters because they know that tomorrow's challenges don't exist yet and may never materialize in the forms they're imagining. Instead, they pour their complete focus into the narrow band of reality they can actually influence. They can control their effort, their attitude, their responses, their preparation, and their choices. They can influence their skills through practice, their health through consistent habits, and their relationships through their behavior and communication. This laser focus on controllable factors creates a profound sense of personal power and effectiveness. While others scatter their attention across 1,000 variables they'll never influence, mentally strong people concentrate their energy like a focused beam of light, creating real change in the areas where change is actually possible. Sign 5. You have a gap between what happens and how you respond. When someone cuts them off in traffic, something extraordinary happens in the minds of mentally strong people that separates them from the 99% who explode into immediate rage. The aggressive driver weaves dangerously into their lane, horn blaring, middle finger extended, and instead of their nervous system hijacking their rational mind, they create space between the trigger and their response. In that crucial moment, while the average person's blood pressure spikes and their hands grip the steering wheel with white-knuckle intensity, mentally strong people access a different operating system entirely. They feel the initial surge of anger and frustration, but they don't become those emotions. They observe their body's automatic reactions without letting those reactions dictate their next move. This same gap appears when devastating news arrives unexpectedly. The phone call that brings word of job loss, relationship betrayal, or medical diagnosis hits them with the same initial shock that would send most people spiraling into panic or despair. But mentally strong people have trained themselves to pause in that critical moment between receiving information and deciding how to respond to it. While others immediately begin catastrophizing about worst-case scenarios or lashing out at the messenger, mentally strong people use this pause to assess their actual situation, consider their options, and choose their response based on what will serve them best in the long term rather than what feels most emotionally satisfying in the moment. When faced with personal insults or attacks on their character, they demonstrate this gap most clearly. The harsh words hit their ears with the same force that would trigger defensive anger or crushing self-doubt in most people, but they've developed the ability to let those words exist in their awareness without immediately accepting them as truth or feeling compelled to strike back. They hear the insult, feel whatever emotional response it generates, and then consciously decide whether the criticism contains useful information or whether it says more about the person delivering it than about them. This pause allows them to respond with measured consideration rather than reactive emotion. This gap isn't about becoming emotionally numb or suppressing natural human responses. It's about inserting conscious choice into situations where most people operate on pure automatic reaction. They've discovered that their first impulse isn't always their wisest impulse, and that taking even a few seconds to consider their options dramatically improves their decision-making and long-term outcomes. The power of this gap compounds over time, creating a life filled with thoughtful responses rather than regrettable reactions, and establishing them as people who can be counted on to remain steady when everyone around them is losing their composure. Sign 6. You take full responsibility for your life without playing victim. Listen to how mentally strong people describe their challenges, and you'll immediately notice something that sets them apart from everyone else. Their words carry a completely different energy, a different relationship to their circumstances that reveals everything about their internal operating system. When they lose a job, they don't say they fired me for no reason, or the company doesn't appreciate talent. Instead, they say, I need to figure out what skills I was missing, or I'm going to use this as an opportunity to find something better aligned with my goals. Their language automatically focuses on what they can learn and what they can do next, rather than on who wronged them or how unfair the situation was. When relationships end, they don't spend months explaining how their partner was selfish, manipulative, or emotionally unavailable. They examine their own contribution to the relationship's failure, asking themselves what patterns they need to change, what red flags they ignored, and how they can choose better partners in the future. They talk about growth and self-awareness rather than betrayal and victimization. When they face financial difficulties, their conversations center around solutions rather than complaints. They don't blame the economy, their upbringing, or their lack of opportunities. They discuss specific actions they're taking to increase their income, reduce their expenses, and build better financial habits. Their words reflect agency and forward movement rather than helplessness and resentment. This linguistic difference reveals a fundamental shift in how they view causation and control in their lives. While most people use language that positions them as passive recipients of external forces, mentally strong people speak as active agents who shape their own experience through their choices and responses. They don't say, stress is killing me. They say, I need to manage my stress better. They don't say, people always let me down. They say, I need to set better boundaries and communicate my expectations more clearly. They don't say, life is unfair, or they say, I need to adapt my strategy to these conditions. This isn't just positive thinking or semantic manipulation. Their language reflects a genuine belief that they have significantly more power over their circumstances than most people realize. They understand that while they can't control what happens to them, they can always control how they interpret events and what they choose to do in response. Even when discussing genuinely difficult circumstances that weren't their fault, they frame their situation in terms of their response options rather than their victimhood status. They acknowledge pain and difficulty without making those experiences the centerpiece of their identity or the excuse for their current limitations. Sign 7. You actively seek discomfort and challenge yourself regularly. Our entire civilization has been built around a single, seductive promise that has become the silent destroyer of mental strength. The idea that comfort equals success, and that avoiding discomfort is the ultimate goal of human existence. Every advertisement, every product innovation, every lifestyle upgrade is designed to eliminate friction, reduce effort, and make life easier than it was yesterday. We've been conditioned to believe that the good life means never having to struggle, never facing uncertainty, and never experiencing the sharp edges of challenge and growth. The modern world whispers constantly that discomfort is a problem to be solved, stress is a disease to be cured, and any form of difficulty represents a failure in our life optimization systems. This cultural programming runs so deep that most people don't even realize they've been trained to flee from the very experiences that would make them stronger. They choose the elevator over the stairs, the drive-through over the walk-in, the easy conversation over the difficult one, the familiar routine over the uncertain adventure. The messaging is everywhere and it's relentless. Comfort food, comfort zones, comfortable shoes, comfortable relationships, comfortable jobs. The underlying assumption is that human beings are fragile creatures who need to be protected from life's natural challenges, rather than capable beings who grow stronger through deliberate exposure to controlled adversity. This philosophy has created entire generations of people who panic at the first sign of discomfort and interpret any form of stress as evidence that something has gone terribly wrong. They've been taught that struggling means they're failing, that difficulty indicates they're on the wrong path, and that ease and flow are the natural states of a life well lived. The technology that surrounds us reinforces this message every day. Apps promise to eliminate friction from every process, services guarantee convenience above all else, and entire industries exist solely to make sure we never have to experience the inconvenience of effort or the discomfort of delayed gratification. Mentally strong people have recognized this cultural conditioning for what it really is, a systematic weakening of human resilience disguised as progress and improvement. They understand that a life optimized for comfort is a life optimized for fragility, and that our obsession with ease has created a population that breaks down the moment conditions become challenging. They've rejected the fundamental premise that comfort should be the primary organizing principle of human existence, recognizing instead that growth, strength, and resilience can only be developed through deliberate engagement with discomfort and challenge. While everyone else seeks the path of least resistance, they actively choose the path that builds the most resistance to life's inevitable difficulties. So while the rest of the world continues chasing comfort and avoiding anything that might disturb their carefully constructed bubbles of ease, mentally strong people have discovered the secret that transforms ordinary humans into the resilient 1% who thrive when others crumble. You've just learned the 7 signs that separate mental strength from mental weakness, and now you know exactly where you stand. You understand that questioning your thoughts instead of blindly following them gives you power over your own mind. You've seen how feeling emotions fully while refusing to be controlled by them creates true emotional mastery. You know that extracting value from criticism while maintaining your self-worth accelerates your growth beyond what most people ever achieve. You've discovered that focusing exclusively on what you can control eliminates the energy drain that keeps 99% of people stuck and frustrated. You understand how creating a gap between stimulus and response transforms you from a reactive creature into a deliberate force of nature. You've learned that taking complete responsibility for your life, even when things aren't your fault, gives you the power to change your circumstances in ways that victim-minded people will never access. And you now know the counterintuitive truth that actively seeking discomfort and challenge is the secret ingredient that creates anti-fragility in a world designed to make you weak and dependent. But here's where most people will close this video, nod their heads in agreement, and then continue living exactly as they did before. They'll treat this information like entertainment rather than instruction, like theory rather than practice. I'm going to challenge you to be different. Take just one of these 7 signs and apply it deliberately for the next 7 days. Choose the one that resonates most strongly with you or the one that feels most uncomfortable to implement. Test it in your real life with real situations and real consequences. Question your thoughts when they try to drag you into anxiety spirals. Feel your emotions without letting them hijack your behavior. Extract value from the next piece of criticism that comes your way. Focus only on what you can control when chaos erupts around you. Create that crucial pause before you react to challenging situations. Take full responsibility for one area of your life where you've been playing victim, or deliberately seek out some form of discomfort that will build your resilience. Live with these principles for 1 week and then come back here. If these concepts actually changed how you handle stress, improved your relationships, or made you more effective in pursuing your goals, then hit that like button and subscribe to Eternal Citadel. But only if they worked, only if you experienced the real transformation that separates the mentally strong from everyone else. Because anyone can watch a video about mental strength, but only the 1% will actually build it.